Welcome. So I'd like to share some thoughts with you today about the nature of angels and demons and the spiritual reality in which they partake. Now, of course, the very idea of angels and demons, the very idea that these are notions to be taken in any way seriously, is somewhat foreign and somewhat strange to a modern secular consciousness imbued with the assumptions of materialism and science, because the secular materialism and science of our day concerns itself with that which is seen. That which is seen and that which I can see with my eyes, I can touch, and appears to me as a material reality. So there is an epistemology, a theory of knowledge, which says what is real, what is true, what is an object of interest and an object of reality is that which is visible, essentially, that which is material, that which can be measured. Now, angels and demons sit in another category. And the category in which they sit is in the category of the unseen, the invisible. And so that is what it is. That is where these realities dwell, where they lie. And so I thought I'd put that preface out there, because a discussion of angels and demons is immediately assailed by materialist, secular kind of assumptions. But I want to say those assumptions, that paradigm is concerned with the seen, and what I would like to talk to you about today is the unseen. So let's begin. So I thought that a way to enter into this discussion of angels and demons would be to talk about intelligence. So what is intelligence? Okay, intelligence, firstly, is something that you have because you are watching this video. And the very meaning of this video, if it has any meaning and any relevance at all to you, is in the intelligibility of it, the transmission of something more than just pixels on a screen, something more than the material facts that are being transmitted through this video. It's about the intelligibility, it's about the idea, it's about what is being spoken of, it's about the thoughts, something like this. And I might just point out that all of that is unseen, okay? All of that is invisible. I am visible. Hello, you're watching the video. Hello, I'm visible, tangible. So there's an element of it which partakes in the visible. But really the meaning of the video is not visible. It is an intuitive center. It is the heart of the video. The heart of the video, the heart of the message, the center of it, you see. That is an invisible core of meaning which is being transmitted, hopefully, through this video. And so you as the viewer have intelligence, and I want to encourage you to think, to pause and think about your world and the world as it manifests in your life. So firstly, your consciousness, your daily experience is an intelligence. It is a way of adapting to, so that's one definition, by the way. I believe it was Stephen Hawking who said that, who made some connection between intelligence and adaptability. So that's one potential way of defining what we're talking about when we're talking about intelligence, is the capacity for a system to adapt. So you wake up in the morning, you feel hungry, you go and get some food. Someone tells you a problem they're having, you listen, you respond in a way that might help them solve their problem. Maybe other people respond to help you with questions you have, and then they answer. And so there is this kind of dialogical nature to intelligence. It is this moving through life, adapting, organizing, and drawing meaning from the world. And of course, that already sounds rather abstract, but my point simply is that you have an intelligence, whoever's watching this, you have it. And is that intelligence material? Is that visible? Can we measure your intelligence? Well, we can have an IQ test. So technically, according to psychological metrics. But myself personally, it's hard for me to simply concede that an IQ test captures all of what we mean by intelligence. Clearly, the notion of intelligence is much broader than the psychological parameters in an IQ test, in my humble opinion. Because what we're talking about in intelligence is consciousness itself, mind itself, the ability of the body to adapt unconsciously. You don't need to think about that. You just feel hungry, or if you fast, for example, the body will start to heal itself. The body has an intelligence to it, and the body has an intelligence to it. So even we don't need to even talk about IQ, like cognitive intelligence, because we could just talk about the intelligence of nature, the intelligence of your body to heal. Which is something that the Greek physicians have, is it Hippocrates? Early Greek physicians were really sensitive to this idea that, if someone is to heal, let them fast. The body, if you fast, the inner physician will be awakened, the Greeks understood. And that is a form of native intelligence. And so that's a form of adaptability, you see. We have this body, hands, arms. We have this body with all these parts, but it's a whole, and it has an intelligence to it. It has a native way of adapting, we could say. And forgive me for going a bit all over the place with this, but because my aim really in this video is to set up a conversation about angels and demons. But before I get to angels and demons, I'd like to unpack a bit this idea of intelligence, because I'll say what I'm trying to get to is that angels and demons are intelligences. They are unseen intelligences which influence reality. They are spiritual realities. When I say spiritual, what I mean by that is that which partakes in the unseen. And so your intelligence is your spirit, is a spirit. Like a spirit is an unseen force. So let me go to another thing. And this is from, I think it's Aristotle. It's from Greek thought. So Aristotle had this idea of the Scala Naturae. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's like the ladder of nature, or the great hierarchy of being. It's an amazing idea. And Aristotle, of course, sets up modern biology with this idea, because what he's saying is, here's what he's saying. He's saying, look, there is the mineral level of reality. If you dig into the earth, you'll find minerals, you'll find iron ore, and you'll find gold, and you'll find silver, and you'll find all of these minerals in the womb of the earth. And then above the mineral plane, there is the plane of the plants, which draws on the mineral. But it is a higher reality than the mineral. We're talking about a hierarchy here, an order, a natural order, or something like this, which is what Aristotle was getting at. So we have the mineral, we have the plant level. So now we have all the grass, and we have all the trees, and all the beautiful flowers, and they sit on top of the mineral plane. And this is biological truth. You go ask a biologist, a modern biologist, about this, and of course this is the case. But you know, Aristotle got there a while ago, let's say, and it's really a philosophical or metaphysical kind of perception, because what he's saying is, let me finish the hierarchy. So we've got mineral, plant, animal. So animal, actually, that comes from a Latin word, anima or animus. And anima or animus mean spirit or soul, which is quite interesting, because, you know, animism, like primordial animism, is like a way of describing the religious category of pagan traditions, kind of like pre-Christian traditions. Animism, which is the idea that like the whole of nature is alive, which of course it is alive. It's not really an idea, is it? Because just go deep into nature and just immerse yourself there, and it should be quite obvious that it's abundant, overflowing with life, with anima. So anyway, so the animals, the word animals is more like an ensouled thing, because, you know, an animal feeds on the grass, feeds on the plants, or if it doesn't, it feeds on animals that do feed on the plants. So the animal plane is dependent upon the plant plane, and it's higher still. So we have mineral, plant, animal, and it's got more, the animals have more soul, more autonomy, more intelligence, more adaptability. So there's a mineral intelligence, there's a plant intelligence, there's an animal intelligence. The elephant, the dog, the cat, the horse, the deer, the tiger, the lion, all of these animals have their anima. They have their intelligence, don't they? They have their unique soul. And there's another level higher than that, which would be the level of human beings. So human beings, to the Greeks, the human being has something called, it's like reason with a capital R, like reason, or another Greek word is nous. And the idea there is that it's like human beings have a rational soul. And that is kind of like hard, it's kind of like, it's a philosophical idea, but I suppose it's like cats and dogs can't communicate in the way that human beings do. Cats and dogs can't problem solve necessarily in the way that human beings do. Part of it is connected to the idea of the word, or the logos, which is another Greek word, like the idea of like rational order, like the intelligence to see into the rational order of things. So actually, like so part of what sets human intelligence apart from animal intelligence in Greek thought, as I understand it, is that we have this nous, we have this logos that is able to see the logos of other things. How amazing is that? So we're able to see, look, there's this thing called gravity. Like all material phenomena kind of adhere to this law, this logos called gravity. Or we could say, like a biologist, going back to the biological study of the zebra, for example. Actually, the zebra has a logos. They have a climate in which they operate. They have certain foods that they like. They have certain patterns of avoiding predators. They have a certain physiology. They have a certain appearance. They have a very distinct logos. And we can look into that and say, look, that is a zebra, and that is a lion, and these are that each one has its logos, each one has its rational order that can be understood and explicated. And we could write a book on the zebra, the lion, and we could communicate that to other human beings and say, you know, that zebra is organized according to this logos, and that's what we might call understanding, or something like that, which is why we have words like logic, psychology, logy, like there's lots of words for it, okay? But like the idea is the logos is this principle of intuiting the order in things, really, something like that. And this is what the ancients understood to set human intelligence apart from animal intelligence, because it's not obvious that animals are necessarily able to see into the logos of all things. And so then I suppose that sets us up to go one step further up the hierarchy. So we've set mineral intelligence, plant intelligence, animal intelligence, human intelligence. And then we could get to spiritual intelligence, which would be maybe the fifth level up. So mineral, plant, animal, human, spiritual. And spiritual is a big category, but then we could think about, well, look, humans have intelligence, but what about, there's an individual intelligence, the intelligence of an individual in their life, but then there's also collective intelligence. So if I speak to you, we could share intelligence, and our intelligences would mature and develop from that conversation. And indeed, you and I, as we talk, are networked in multiple other intelligences. So different fields, like psychology and biology and all of these, mathematics, as I've mentioned already, are different fields. And those fields are intelligences, which kind of flow into and feed our individual intelligences. But then also the family, for example, is an intelligence. There's a certain way the family does things. There's certain values around the family, around which the family is centered. There's certain values, there's certain locations even around which the family is centered. And then beyond the family, you know, there's like the broader community. If you go to work at a particular company, that company is an intelligence, there's a collective intelligence, espousing certain values, aiming at certain things, behaving in certain ways. And then you get the idea of like the intelligence of a city. So London, so can you see London? That's the thing, right? Because we were talking about unseen and seen. Like, yes, like if you drive into London city, you can see London, but it's not necessarily obvious where the border of London is. Because that border has evolved over time, it's changed over time. What people meant by London has changed over time. The general geographical area has remained the same. But my point is that London is an unseen concept. Maybe concept isn't the right word, like London has a spirit, that's my point. London has a spirit, and even the spirit of London today is different from the spirit of London in the 80s, for example. At a different period in time, if you went into the city, London in the 80s is a different place to it when it is now, to what it is now. You know, and the same if you go in London in the 19th century, it's a different place. It expresses a different zeitgeist, you see, a different spirit of that time. But yet, Londinium was established by the Romans and is about 2,000 years old. And there is this thing, don't know if thing's even the best word, but there is this principle, right? There is this principle called London. It's named London, and it is something people interact with. People, if you have, you know, if you order something to your house and you live in London, you live in London. Like there's like a very so reality is organized according to that principle. Now I realize as I wander into this conversation that this all just sounds really obvious. Like, why am I explaining something that's so mundane, so commonplace? Like, yeah, okay, Sam, like obviously London's a place, and like obviously, you know, when I order things to my place in London, they come to me. But like, that's something worth reflecting on, in my opinion, because it's not really like obvious what London is in any way. It's like, it's an idea, really. It has a, I think the Greek word is eidos, E-I-D-O-S. It comes from Plato, where our word idea comes from. So the eidos of London is what I'm talking about. That is an intelligence, a spirit. And if you go to London, you might imbibe that spirit. You know, you might imbibe the spirit that's in the air of London in the time you go to London, for example. And that intelligence might become a part of your soul, part of the complex mixture of intelligences that make up your identity. Because your identity, you see, partakes in the same pattern, because your name, I'll use my name, Sam, is partaking in the same thing as London, right? Like London in the 19th century was a different place, but was still London. You know, me at 10 years old was expressing a different spirit, a different zeitgeist, but the spirit of the depths, like the eidos, the idea, the name, the logos of my identity endures somehow. And so my point simply is that is a spiritual principle, because what else can we call it? It's not seen. It's not seen. Like it's an old philosophical problem of identity called the ship of Theseus. And the ship of Theseus is all about the story is I think it was Theseus who went into the labyrinth on Crete and slew the Minotaur as a Greek hero, and he had a ship that took him, I think it was from Athens to Crete. And the basic philosophical problem is this: like the ship is made up of all these different planks of wood, and but sometimes those planks of wood get like worn and torn and are in need of repair. And so what if we took out this piece of wood and replaced it, took out this piece of wood and replaced it, took out this piece of wood and replaced it, and did that until all of the pieces of the wood are completely new? Would it be the ship of Theseus still? That's an old Greek philosophical problem, centering on the problem of identity. And of course, you and I are ships of Theseus, because we know from insights from modern science that our cells regenerate every 7 to 8 years or whatsoever completely. So there is nothing material, seen, measurable. There's nothing that partakes in the seen, material plane about you or about me that is the same as it was 10 years ago, let's say. no thing. But actually, no, there is one thing, right? And that thing is your eidos, your logos, your spirit, isn't it? And that's your name. Now, it's not just your name, but naming is a spiritual principle. To name a thing was the first task Adam was given by God in the book of Genesis. But how interesting is that? Human beings are created by God in Genesis, and the first task given is the task for Adam to name the animals. And the naming of a person as they come into this world is a significant thing, you see. Anyway, and this is all connected to logos, right? Because it's about the establishment of a center, a spiritual center, a logos of our personhood, something like this. And that partakes in an unseen realm, spiritual realm. So I've gone a bit all over the place with this. Shall I get onto angels and demons? Or no, I'm just going to go down the hierarchy first, and then I'll go to back up to angels and demons. So remember, I just said we have the material plane, we have the plane of the plants, we have the plane of the animals, we have the plane of the humans, and we have the plane of the spiritual beings. Kind of a 5-step rough hierarchy. So one perception that I've intuited personally is that the levels down the hierarchy from human beings have intelligences. This isn't really a particularly controversial claim. For example, like if you have a dog or a cat, they are intelligent beings. They're intelligent beings with whom we can enter into deep resonance, and we can connect to their intelligence. And if you even go down below the animal plane, which is a whole discussion in itself, But a quick note on the animal plane, like a lot of shamanic cultures, like a lot of kind of like primal cultures commune with animals. Like actually, some of the first cave art, about 30 to 40,000 years ago, long time ago, they did cave drawings of like the hunts of the bison, like the hunts of the deer, and like part of that is like a consciousness of like sinking into the animal consciousness, like understanding what it is to be a deer. Like the hunter culture, must inhabit the spirit of the deer to be as the deer. So there's a kind of human intelligence going into the animal, kind of a descent into the animal plane of intelligence. And this is kind of what shamanism basically is all about. I recently watched a fantastic documentary on the eagle huntress of Mongolia, and she raised an eagle from a young eagle, an eaglet, raised the eagle up and entered into a phenomenal relationship with this eagle, and was able to call the eagle and say, like riding on her horse, call the eagle down, and the eagle would hunt a fox, for example. She'd be able to work with the intelligence of the eagle for hunting. It's like a very old tradition in Mongolia. And so shamanic cultures are able to enter into relationship with animal intelligence, and are able perhaps to ecstatically and intuitively enter the animal consciousness in some strange way. Indeed, this is the role of the shaman in many ways, is to become the deer, become the great eagle. And that was an invaluable resource for the hunter cultures, which needed deer to survive the cold winters, for example. But even below animal intelligences, we have now the plane of the plants. And, you know, it strikes me that plants are intelligent. It's a bit less obvious than animals, perhaps, because you can look at an eagle and you can look at a dolphin and you can look at a dog and you can be like, wow, what an intelligent animal. Wow, that's so striking. But it's less obvious with plants because they have less anima, like they can't necessarily get up and walk around, or they're not necessarily as mobile as animals. The level of organization, the level of consciousness, the level of intelligence is less in some sense. But there still is intelligence there. So the reason I'm speaking with such conviction about this is because once upon a time I ate some mushrooms and felt myself to be and awoke to the perception that the ancient oak tree in front of me had something to say, which of course sounds entirely mad, but I kind of think that it's more mad to think that trees aren't intelligent, because look, like I think it's Paul Stamets is an amazing person. He spoke on Joe Rogan's podcast at some point. Really worth listening to that if you want to go deeper into this idea of plant intelligence. But like, you know, fungi, mushrooms, the mushrooms which I imbibed are a intelligence. And because like Paul Stamets talks about how like mushrooms basically the mycelial networks, mycelium, these fungal networks are basically in like the Pacific Northwest, are distributed throughout the whole soil of a forest. And actually all the nutrition, minerals, right? The minerals at the plain below, all the minerals and the nutrition are like distributed through this interconnective internet fungal network of mycelium in the soil. And actually the trees, the great oaks and the different trees around, they depend upon the mushrooms. And so this whole ecology of ancient trees and ancient mushrooms, in all this like complex relationship, is intelligent, like it's adaptive. Like I don't know how far I can push it, but if you listen to Paul Stamets, it's really interesting. Like, for example, I don't know, you need to fact check this claim, but some of the things, one of the things he said is that there's like there's a Japanese experiment where like basically a fungus was put in a petri dish and it had the map of Japan's underground network, and basically like it was put in there and it found like the most optimal route from a point A to point B through that network. It found the optimal route through that network. Like, so point A, point B, maze in between of like connections and networks to get from here to here. Fungus grew the optimal route in this experiment, apparently. So Paul Stamets, you just listen to him about plant intelligences. And the other point would be like in an ecology, if a tree is damaged in a storm, there'd be an idea that like the trees and the fungus can help to heal and give nutrients to that tree and restore it. It's obviously a very complex topic, but my point simply is that plants are intelligent, okay? Very, very intelligent, very intelligent. And you've of course got the Venus fly traps, is that right? You know, where they can trap flies, lure them in with attractive scents and trap them. There's all sorts of examples. But my point is, human beings are intelligent, animals are intelligent, plants are intelligent. They're all intelligent. They have adaptive capacity. They have ways to maintain their identities, which is a fascinating thing. I don't know too much about the mineral plane, which is the plane below the plants, but of course, this is where the whole work of alchemy, which is something I've been very interested in, centers around, because alchemy is centered around the idea that actually lead, a mineral, could be transformed into gold, another mineral, and that whole alchemical premise is actually based on Mircea Eliade talks about it in The Forge and the Crucible. I think he says that like the assumption is that nature tends towards perfection. So like if you give it 1,000 years, the minerals, like the lead, would transfigure itself into gold. It would aim towards this perfection. And that the alchemist was kind of like a midwife in that sense, like helping the lead transform into gold. So that's a magical understanding that's associated with alchemy. Anyway, all of this is to simply say that there is a hierarchy of being, Aristotle's Scala Naturae, mineral, plant, animal, human, and that each of these partakes in intelligence. And of course, your gut is made of all of the matter from animals, and depending what you eat, made from animals and plants and minerals. So like your whole physical being is sustained by these lower planes in the hierarchy. Your intelligence, your logos, your identity, your name is sustained by those things. But my point is that they have intelligence, and that a shamanic consciousness kind of descends into the animal intelligence or the plant intelligence. So that's kind of like if you go down the hierarchy. Now, what's up the hierarchy? Well, up the hierarchy, as I've alluded to the conversation around the cities, is like London is a greater intelligence than me, because say, I don't know, is it like let's call it 5 million, it might be more like 8 million people live in the London metropolitan area. So it's me times 8 million. And those people are doing loads of different things, you know, they're involved in different companies, different art scenes, different lifestyles, all these like complex configurations of intelligences. And even London is made up of its boroughs, you know, and those boroughs have different centers and different hubs of activity and culture, etc. So London's just like a network of intelligences itself. But like the spirit of London is a thing, and then the spirit of the different boroughs within London are things too. But is that an angel or a demon? Is London, the spirit of London, really an angel or a demon? Well, I don't necessarily want to say that. I just want to say that there are intelligences, unseen intelligences, that aren't like minerals. You can see like, oh, okay, that's iron, that's gold. They're not like, oh, okay, that's an oak tree, that's a yew tree, that's what that is, that's what that is. Oh, you know, that's a horse, that's a cat, that's a dog, that's what those things are. Those things all have intelligence, as I've just said, but London isn't like that, is it? Because London isn't reducible to any material thing in the same way. Material locality is generally associated with an area, but it's more of a spiritual thing. It's more of a collection of values, isn't it? It's more of a collection of identities, isn't it? It's like the centre of England, like the centre of the UK, the place where government is. It's like the heart of the identity of the country. It's the heart, it's where things come together. It's where taxes are taken into London. Government from all the regions is centralised in London. Like industries, finance industries, different industries, centre in London. So it's a center, right? It's a commercial center, a cultural center, and it's a center of identity for, guess what? A broader intelligence. And that broader intelligence might be England, it might be Wales, it might be Scotland, it might be Northern Ireland, it might be the United Kingdom, it might be the broader principality. So that's another hierarchy. Are you seeing this? And those things, again, aren't as easily definable in terms of like an oak tree is like this oak tree in front of me, or like a cat or a dog. Like a dog comes in, hello, like this is the dog. London's not necessarily like that, is it? Nor is England, nor is the UK. Now, these things do have established borders, and those borders are defined, and that defines their identity. But my point simply is that the intelligence of these things is more spiritual than it is material. More so, like it's a hierarchy from density to lightness, from earth to heaven, from material to plant, to animal, to human, to city, to nation, etc. Now, what's above nation? What's above all of these things, right? So now, finally, perhaps, I could talk a little about angels and demons, but now I'm thinking maybe I should just do another video. But perhaps I'll persevere. So, angels and demons. So look, the idea for me about this is that there are unseen intelligences which constellate certain values, and that human nature, part of our reason, capital R, what the Greeks call reason, part of our nous, part of our logos, part of our unique human intelligence is our morality, is our sense of good and evil, is our sense of beauty and ugliness, is our sense of truth and deceit and justice and injustice. These are all ideas, eidos, they're ideas and ideals, which the spirit can see and can hope for and can realize. And so this moral possibility of the human heart opens up, I would say, speaks to a broad spiritual realm in which we are participating. And when I say we, I mean, definitely I mean us, okay? I mean us as individual intelligences, you, me, human beings as individuals, but I also mean maybe, you know, families, communities, places, cities, areas, nations, like the whole world, depending on the level you go, whether you go really high up to the macro or to the local community or the local situation, the whole world of human affairs partakes in this angelic and demonic reality. And so a simple way I might outline this category is through wow, yeah, that could be right. So it's a hierarchy. So hierarchy is the way I understand this, at least. So I've laid out the hierarchy, a hierarchy, the great chain of being from Aristotle. Basically, you could argue that what is evil and what is sinful, this is from a Christian perspective, what is evil and sinful is what draws our intelligence down. So the demon is the intelligence which draws our intelligence down. So the traditional model of the passions and of sin in Christian theology, here are the 7 deadly sins. lust, glut, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. Now, I don't have the space necessarily to go into these 7 deadly sins right now, although I'd love to, because I think it's a profound blueprint or template for how the human soul is organized. But these things you see are at work in the world. They're at work in London, in New York, in LA, in Toronto, in Sydney, in all of these different cities around the world. These 7 are at play, you see, in the cities, but also in the hearts and in the communities. And it all starts in the heart. It all comes down to the heart, because what is London without all of the bodies it recruits into its identity, all the intelligences, all the names, right? Anyway, so the 7 deadly sins, so like lust, for example, calls our intelligence down into sexual desire, into mere sexual desire. And like that is part of our animal nature. So like, you see how I've laid out this hierarchy: mineral, plant, animal, human. So like the idea with lust is that your intelligence is kind of debasing itself by going down into the inhabiting. You're being like an animal when you're in lust, basically, because what you're doing is you're violating or sinning against, like missing the mark of. That's what sin means. You're straying, you're shooting an arrow that is wayward, away from your true nature, which is the nous, the logos, the capacity to enter into communion with spiritual things, with the capacity to enter into communion with the love of God, for example, like to enter into true love, to enter into a communion of hearts, like something up. So this is like what I'm trying to say is like good and evil, virtue and sin are connected to these ideas of like up and down. And so like lust is a principality, or like I'll use the word intelligence. Lust is an autonomous or intelligence that draws our intelligence down into it. And the 7 deadly sins each have like their counterpart. So like lust and chastity, like chastity is the virtue which is the opposite of lust. And so what that does is it's about our intelligence entering into communion with what is most high and what is sacred. Maybe I'll run through the 7 deadly sins because I find it really interesting. Like glut, same thing, right? So like glut is I'm being drawn into my animality again because I have a passion for food. Like I have a deep animal passion for food and for surviving with food, but now I just eat food in excess, and now there's a principality at work there. I keep using this word principality, and I think it's the book of Ephesians in the New Testament. St. Paul, the Apostle Paul, uses that word to describe demonic realities, basically. So forgive me for using that word, but what I mean by principalities is I mean the same thing as intelligences, basically. Like there's an intelligence greater, more powerful than me, my intelligence, which draws people, which seduces people into looking down into lust. And there's another principality, there's another intelligence that seduces people into looking down into glut, into the excess there. And then, the virtue there is fasting, or what's called temperance. So if I temper my want to consume food, if I temper that and I fast, then again, what I'm doing is my intelligence, my attention, which is actually kind of like the basic unit of intelligence, is attention. My attention is now being drawn up to something higher, and I am tempering my gut. And like even on our body, right? Like our sexual organs are down, our gut is down, and our brain is higher. Like even just in the microcosm of the human being, it's like the pattern's the pattern. Like the pattern is the pattern. Like the hierarchy is the hierarchy. It's how things are organized. You know, like so lust, glut, greed. There's a principality, there is an intelligence which runs through human society, through cities, through nations, and through, crucially, the human heart, which says more resources to me. And that's a looking down again, that's a coveting, it's like a coveting what is material, what is seen. And perhaps that's another connection, you know, with this idea of sin and this idea of demons. Like the demons, what they're doing is they're seducing us to attend to and give ourselves to that which is seen. So they're seducing us into a materialism of sorts, you see, because our sexual desires are based on what is seen, our appetites are based on what is seen, greed, how much more can I get materially, lust, glut, greed, sloth. Okay, like again, sloth is like all of it is about like the intelligences which draw us down. So like sloth is again the energy of me going down, like my energy state going down. And that's a seduction as well. That's a seduction. It's seducing to do nothing. It's seducing to yield to that. And there's an intelligence, there's a voice actually in our ear, in our mind, that whispers those things all the time. And it's that voice, you see, that is the demon. And I'm not being poetic or figurative here. I'm being completely sincere. Like that is a demon. Because what other form do intelligences have? You know, I've just talked about intelligences, how you and me have intelligences, and what part of what that intelligence is to use thought to communicate. Well, what if our thoughts are made up of these broader principalities, these broader intelligences? And one of the patterns of those thoughts are seductions towards gluttony, towards lust, towards greed, towards sloth, towards wrath, towards anger, towards, why is this person not behaving like I want them to do? Why is this person behaving in a way that I don't find the way I like it? Why? Like there's like anger. And it's more than that, you know, it can lead to like literally killing, just violence, just all sorts of horror. And again, that draws us down into our anger. But then again, there's a seduction in that because there's something simple and primitive about that. But you know, the virtue, again, the virtue which draws us up is patience, actually. I think it is with wrath, patience, which is so interesting to me, because patience comes from this Latin word, like it's from like passion, from like pathos, from like suffering. So it's like, if I can bear my suffering, and if I can truly suffer and really bear suffering, like bear someone annoying me, someone angering me, someone doing something displeasing to me, someone hurting me, someone betraying me, which are really not simple things to just bear, okay? Because human life is really complicated, and there's an almost primal justice to say, look, if someone's betrayed me or someone's done me wrong, you know, I should get back at them. There's a kind of natural and primal logic to that thinking, you know. So it's not necessarily self-evident that should be overcome or transcended, but you know, that's what the virtue of patience is all about, is to suffer that and to resist not evil and to really suffer it and to understand that life is suffering, and that if I can bear my suffering in humility, then I can actually undermine the principality, the demon of wrath. I can undermine the source of that demon's power through this virtue called patience. And by the way, as I talk through these things, this is a simple way of thinking about angels and demons, is like that the demon is lust that draws me down, but then the angel is chastity, which draws me up. Like the demon is glut that draws me down. The angel is temperance, which calls me higher. The demon is sloth. The angel is diligence. The demon is wrath. The angel is patience. The final two are envy, which is like coveting, looking at what someone else has got and saying, oh, I want that. And how dare they have that? And that is an offense to me that they have that. And I want that. I yearn for that. I yearn so deeply for the things that they have. And how unfair is it that they have those things? Again, I think there's a kind of naturalness and something that can be understood in all of these impulses called sin. There really is like something, there's an intuitive logic to them. But the idea is that it is this very kind of naturalness and intuitive logic that the demons prey upon, because that is where the seductive voice gets your ear, and then you get into this thought pattern of like envy, basically, and like it does lead people down very, very dark paths, envy. And so the virtue which kind of puts to death envy is gratitude. So that's there's a powerful angelic force associated with the virtue of gratitude, being grateful for even being alive, for having somewhere to live, for having something to eat, to being able to think, to having supportive people around you, like, who go on all day about the things to be grateful for in this world. But it's such a beautiful vision to me that, like in the absence of gratitude, their envy grows. And it calls us to look down, to focus on what we don't have. But gratitude lifts us up and to focus on everything that we do have and is given freely. And then the final, perhaps most important one, is pride and humility. And even this idea of pride and humility, how I think of it is that pride is when I look down on everything else. Look at my eyes. If I'm looking down, then where am I? I must be at the top, right? Because I'm looking down on everything else. And that is the pattern of pride, is I am above everything else. I'm above other people. I'm above this thing I'm doing. I'm above this. I'm above that. This aboveness is pride. And that's perhaps the chief sin and perhaps the chief of the demons, because it is that spirit that is the dark and demonic key to all of the other sins that I've just outlined. And you can really think of sin, like that word, as just entering into communion with a demonic intelligence, listening to a voice, which is a thought that enters every human being's mind. There's nothing wrong with those thoughts in themselves, but there is a way in which our intelligence, our name, our logos, enters into a relationship with, a communion with, a demonic, lower intelligence, voice, spirit, and that can pollute and corrupt our soul. Anyway, so pride is like about this looking down, and then humility is that I am low And where do you look when you're low? If you understand yourself as really, really low, you must look up. You must look up. You must look up to the heavens. You must look up to the angels. You must look up to the saints. You must look up to God, like up to the greatest thing. And part of the way we can think of God is that which is good, that which is just, that which is noble, that which is beautiful, that which is true. Like the great ideals of our culture, like the great ideals, the great things that call to us in this life, like those things that that I think all human beings recognize and intuit. And it's coming into communion and into relationship with those intelligences, the high in the hierarchy, and bringing our intelligence into communion, into alignment, into harmony with those intelligences. That is Christian virtue. And that is a participatory dance, and is a daily struggle, and is really, in my view, like it is by the grace of God that we are able to do that, like, because it's a struggle, like, because these demonic principalities that I just told you about, lust, greed, glut, sloth, wrath, envy, pride, these are the sins that afflict the human heart every day, and they have a character, they have a spirit to them, they have a power to them, they have a seductive capacity to them, and they are very literally the voices in your head that assail you every day with these such temptations. And they call you to enter into a covenant with them. They call you to enter into a relationship with them, to appease their will. And if you do that, and when you do that, because we all do sin, you bring your soul down, you see? You sin against what it is to be human, and you sin against the image in which you're made, the true quintessence, the true essence, the true heart and soul of who you are as a human being. What you do is you move down and sin against that. And my great hope and my great faith is that we are able to overcome that sin, and that sin has been overcome metaphysically through the incarnation and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's what I believe. And you don't necessarily need to believe that. I don't want to say that, but I wanted to just articulate in this video how I understand reality to be, drawing on Greek philosophy and Christian theology. I wanted to give an account of the hierarchy of the cosmic hierarchy, the hierarchy of nature, how that is organized, and how the human soul is a microcosm of that cosmic hierarchy. And so in the same way that there is the mineral, the plant, the animal, the human, and the spiritual, there is also a hierarchy of our own nature, our sexual drives below, our appetite below, money, resources below. There are all these below things, you see, that we can attend to, and that invite us to attend to them. And that is all a looking down of our consciousness. And because sin is about aim, it's about where we aim, where we look, where we give our attention. It's a missing the mark. That's all it is. It's like Robin Hood shooting an arrow and missing. It goes wayward. It goes into the wild spaces. And all virtue is a call to aim true and to aim true. And what that true aim is according to what Plato called the good, the true, and the beautiful, and also some of the virtues that I outlined today. So each passion and each sin has its counterpoint, has its angel, which is like a sword that overcomes the dragon, the monstrous demon that afflicts us. So the angel is like a sword that overcomes the demonic power, and our intelligence is able to connect to and relate to those that are the swords in this spiritual warfare, and also those which are the dragons and the demons in the spiritual warfare. Those are part of the mind, like part of the soul, like part of the strange nature of our human intelligence is this spiritual warfare. I'm kind of drawing on the book of Ephesians here from St. Paul's writings. I'm drawing on Christian theology. I'm drawing on Greek philosophy about the nature of hierarchies. And so perhaps I'll conclude the video there. These are some of the things I've been thinking a lot about in conversation with many other intelligences, many other people who have afforded me great insight through conversation and through discussion, through listening, through speaking, through all of this. So it's something I'm learning constantly about. But I think it's a sublime vision. It truly is a sublime vision. And ultimately, I'm concerned with truth, like whatever that is. Like I know that the human mind cannot fully comprehend truth. That there always will be mysteries in this life ultimately. But I do seek truth, and this, what I'm articulating to you, to me feels just true. Like it feels like a true description of daily life as a human being, a true description of how human intelligence is laid out. And so I think this idea of hierarchy, different orders of reality, different ranks of reality, in differential powers of reality, from the heavy to the light, and from that which calls us down and that which draws us up. I think we see hierarchies at every level of reality, and the microcosm of the human being is a hierarchy, and the microcosm of human intelligence is a hierarchy. And angels and demons are the powers which call us up, angels, and seduce us down, demons. And the strange nature of human intelligence is the mediation between those forces, and the way in which we infuse our volition, our will, into those calls. So if we're called up and seduced down, which choice do we make? That's the mystery of the human will. That's the mystery of human morality. And that seems to really, really matter to me, because these things are real, and they do color our soul, and they do color our reality. And because we're part of families, communities, cultures, the degree to which the angels and demons, the nature of our relationship to the angels and demons is palpable in the way we be in the world, the way we are in the world. And that is culture. That is culture, that is politics, that is society. Everything that is visible and seen is an outward expression of that unseen spiritual warfare, is kind of the language that St. Paul uses in Ephesians. So yeah, perhaps I'll wrap it up there. That was a video on spiritual warfare, on angels and demons, on hierarchy, the Scala Naturae, on Aristotle, on Plato, and on morality, and on good and evil. So lots of light topics there. But yeah, it's something I've been thinking a lot about, and I wanted to share it with you today. And yeah, I would absolutely love any feedback or thoughts or comments. I'd love to hear them below. Yep, that's that. Thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it.